Hi, this is Les and Amy from the RevGenetics Podcast. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube and now on Spotify, where we do a deep dive on supplements and longevity studies.
And today we are tackling a shift in medical philosophy, that is. Well, it's monumental.
A big one.
Yeah. For decades, medicine has really focused on what the sources call diagnostic care.
Right, so waiting until you're already diagnosed with something, cancer, heart disease, whatever, and then rushing in.
Exactly. Rushing in with medications, with surgery to treat the acute symptoms.
Playing catch-up, basically. But what we're looking at today is this whole other field, this preventative care.
And it focuses on the root cause of almost all of those issues.
Which is aging itself. I mean, that's the crucial context here, right?
Yeah.
Aging is the #1 risk factor for pretty much every major human disease.
It is. It accounts for over 2/3 of deaths globally. So if you can prevent aging, you can, in theory, prevent most chronic disease.
So this new approach targets what they call the hallmarks of aging.
Right. Instead of treating a disease at 75, you're trying to intervene at the cellular level, maybe in your 40s or 50s.
Okay, let's unpack that. Hallmarks of aging. That sounds super technical, but it's really the foundation for all this research, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Think of your body like a car. As it gets older, a few different systems start to break down at the same time.
Okay.
One major hallmark is something called cellular senescence.
Ah, the zombie cells.
Zombie cells. They refuse to die, but they also stop working properly. They just hang around, causing inflammation and clogging up the system.
So like the clutter of the body.
Precisely. And another key area, and this is what our compounds today really target, is epigenetic alterations.
This one's a little trickier.
A little. It just means changes in how your genes are expressed. Your DNA blueprint, your code, it stays the same.
Right.
But the instructions for reading that code get smudged over time.
So you have a good gene, but the cell just stops reading it correctly.
Exactly. Because the packaging around the DNA gets messy.
So we're not talking about mutations, but just bad management of the DNA we already have.
Perfectly to put it.
And we know the classic advice for this is, lifestyle stuff, caloric restriction, intense exercise. But the sources are pretty clear that those things suffer from poor long-term adherence.
It's just incredibly hard to stick with them for decades, which is where these pharmacological interventions come in. Researchers are looking for tools they call geroprotectors.
And what exactly are those?
They're just drugs, or in this case, natural compounds that are designed to target those underlying problems.
The root causes.
The root biomarkers, yeah. Clearing out the zombie cells or fixing those epigenetic smudges. And the big appeal is that they are, and this is a quote, simple to implement, easy to adhere to, and cost-effective.
A lot easier than a decade of near starvation, I'd imagine.
A lot easier.
Okay, so we're looking for a simple pill with complex benefits. The research we're diving into focuses on natural compounds. Which ones are the stars here?
We're focused on 4 really well-known ones: curcumin, quercetin, resveratrol, and berberine.
And they all work in a similar way.
They do. They're all known as histone deacetylase inhibitors, or HDAC inhibitors.
Okay, HDAC inhibitor. That sounds dense. Let's break it down.
It's simpler than it sounds. Imagine your DNA is a scroll of instructions.
Okay.
If that scroll is rolled up way too tightly, the cell can't read the good parts, the genes for longevity.
They can't access the information.
Right. These compounds act like tiny keys. They help loosen the scroll just enough so the cell can read those healthy genes again. They basically dial up the good stuff and dial down the bad.
That's a powerful idea, using natural tools to just fine-tune our own genetics.
Mm-hmm.
But that brings up a big question the study addresses. Aging is so complex, right? Dozens of breakdowns.
Yeah.
So why not just create one super powerful drug? Why look at combinations of these things?
Because aging is just too complex for one silver bullet. The sources really emphasize this. The whole longevity network involves over 50 unique genes all working together. Yeah. So if you have 50 different systems failing DNA repair, energy, everything, a single drug approach is, quote, unlikely to significantly extend lifespan. You need a team.
But then doesn't that create its own problem? If you start adding multiple compounds, aren't you just adding more confusion? A risk of them, tripping over each other?
That is a great question, and it's exactly why researchers look for something called synergy.
A synergy, okay.
That's the whole point of the study. Synergy means when two things work together, their combined effect is way, way stronger than just adding their individual effects.
Give me an analogy. Lock it in for me.
Okay, think of 2 small flashlights.
Got it.
If you just hold them next to each other, The beam of light is a little wider, that's it. But if you tape them together, so the lenses are perfectly aligned.
Oh, okay.
The light doesn't just double, it becomes the single powerful spotlight that can see much farther. They amplify each other.
So in the body, one compound might be fixing one thing, and the second compound is fixing something completely different that helps the first one work better.
Precisely. They are hitting non-overlapping pathways. One isn't just a backup for the other. They're complementing each other to solve a massive problem.
That makes so much sense. Okay, let's get to the experiment. This research used simple baker's yeast. Why should we care about yeast?
It seems basic, I know. But it's an incredible model for this kind of work.
How so?
Even though it's just a single cell, it shares over 4,300 genes and these really essential aging pathways with us. The basic machinery is conserved.
So it's like a tiny, simple cousin that gives us really fast, cheap data on how these compounds work.
Exactly.
So what happened when they gave these yeast cousins just one compound versus a pair?
Well, even the single compounds were impressive. On their own, they could make the yeast live up to maybe 6 or even 8.5 days.
And the baseline untreated was what?
About 3 days.
So a single drug can more than double their lifespan? That's already good.
It is good, but the combinations were shocking. When they gave the yeast 2 compounds at once, the lifespan jumped by an average of 68% over what the single drugs did.
68% more. So the synergy was real.
Very real and substantial.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for us. We're focused on curcumin, resveratrol, and quercetin. Which specific pair was the absolute strongest?
The pairing of curcumin and resveratrol, it was the undisputed champion in these tests.
What were the numbers on that one?
Together, they extended the maximum lifespan to a staggering 14 days.
14 days from 3?
Yep, and compared to the single drugs, that was an 8-day increase just from combining them.
That's more than a 4-fold increase in longevity from 2 natural compounds working together.
Yeah.
It must mean their targets are really complementary.
That's the key implication, yes. Resveratrol is famous for activating sirtuins, those longevity genes.
Right, the DNA repair crew.
And curcumin is a powerhouse anti-inflammatory. So you're activating the repair crew and reducing the stress that was making them struggle in the first place.
It's like fixing the engine and the engine coolant at the exact same time.
Perfect analogy.
So was this just a lucky pairing, or did the other combos work too?
Not at all unique. Synergy was the rule here, not the exception. The other pairings, like curcumin and quercetin or quercetin and resveratrol, they both extended lifespan to about 9.5 days.
Still a huge jump.
A huge jump. And the researchers found that 5 out of the 6 pairs they tested showed this powerful synergistic effect.
So the takeaway isn't just that one pair works, it's that this whole strategy of combining things works.
That's it.
Okay, so the big question. If 2 is so much better than 1, what about 3 or 4? Did they run into that complexity wall you mentioned?
The complete opposite happened. It actually validated the whole theory. Adding a 3rd or a 4th compound kept boosting the results. Dramatically. The ultimate 4-compound mixos, curcumin, quercetin, resveratrol, and berberine, it extended the maximum lifespan to a massive 22.8 days.
Whoa, 22.8. We went from 3 days untreated to almost 23 days.
Exactly, just by layering these natural compounds that are all hitting different parts of the aging process.
That's why the study concludes that these high-order combinations have even greater potential.
When you're fighting a complex network failure, you have to target as many nodes as you can all at once. That's where you get the exponential returns. RevGenetics sponsors these deep dives.
We appreciate their dedication to researching longevity supplements backed by science. It's really just stunning. To see the lifespan go from 3 days to almost 23, that's a, nearly 700% increase.
Around that, yeah.
I think the main aha moment for you, the listener, has to be the sheer power of this combination strategy. 5 of the 6 pairs work synergistically. It really supports the idea that the future isn't about one magic bullet.
It's about complex combinations, and that approach is also key for safety.
How so?
Well, when compounds work synergistically, it often means you can use lower doses of each one to get the desired effect.
And lower doses usually mean fewer side effects.
Exactly. It's a win-win for any kind of longevity intervention.
Now, obviously this research uses yeast. That's a long way from a human, even with the shared genes. So what are the practical implications? How do we get from a 23-day yeast life to, human application?
The implication is huge because those underlying mechanisms we talked about, gene expression, energy systems, are shared. This research gives us a validated map.
So it's not guesswork anymore.
Not at all. It tells us which combinations, like curcumin and resveratrol, are worth investing serious time and money into for further research. The next steps are clear.
Which would be?
Confirming these effects in other organisms like worms or mice, and then eventually moving to human clinical trials. You have to confirm it works, rule out any negative effects, and this is the most important part, figure out the optimal human dosages.
But the core concept that combining these available natural compounds is the synergistic way forward, that seems pretty well established now.
I would say so, yes.
You know, if the combination of just 4 established natural compounds can achieve nearly 700% increase in lifespan in a model like yeast, it does lead to a really provocative final question for all of us to think about. What combinations of cutting-edge compounds are researchers already planning to test next? And what level of lifespan extension might we see when we move beyond 4 and optimize a stack of maybe 6 or 8, all targeting different pillars of the aging process?
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast on the latest published science.
Thank you for listening to the RevGenetics Podcast. RevGenetics.com for the best longevity supplements on Earth.